G'day viewers, Graham here, hope you're doing well. Well, the world's an interesting place and we're living in interesting times. Heaps of things going on around us at the moment that are showing us that things aren't quite right. From the markets and the political scene to what's happening militarily around the world. There's all kinds of examples of how the world's preparing for something very big. It's clear to see that we're going to have some major financial changes come down the pipeline very, very soon. And by watching the silver market, it's giving us a good example of it unravelling. And with events that have occurred recently, not only do we get to see the mechanisms of change, but we also have the opportunity of taking advantage of it. Every time throughout history that there's been a major transition, there's always people in the position to be able to take advantage of it. And a lot of that just boils down to knowing about it. So astute people like yourselves, who have spent time, effort and energy on understanding how your reality is affecting you, will eventually be able to have the opportunity to produce a very positive outcome for yourself. But before I go on, I do want to say thank you very much to all of you guys out there who are subscribing. Having so many people interested in listening to my perspective is quite rewarding, and I do appreciate it very much. The majority of the comments have been very nice, and it's been very good to see the positive reaction to the videos that I've been making. So thank you very much again for subscribing, and I'll continue to try and make videos that are as unbiased as I can possibly make them, so that we can take further advantage of what's occurring in our world at the moment. As a lot of you know, I'm a home dad with 4 kids, so my income's fairly restricted. So if you like my videos and I've helped out in any way, by clicking on the advertisements that accompany my videos will help me out in the AdSense, because it generates a small revenue for me to supplement my income. Because as some of you know, I'm also working on the GSM, which is an organisation to protect our rights to buy, sell and trade in gold and silver. However, generating funds for it still remains a challenge. But I'd just like to say thanks to all you guys out there who have joined the GSM. I really do appreciate your membership, as our membership base is expanding more and more every day, and I hope to be able to increase the level of content distributed to members in the GSM. But it's interesting to note that it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. It's very important to pay attention to what's happening in the economies of different countries. Even though there's something happening here in Australia that might seem to have no connection to another country, in the grand scheme of things it really does. Because these big plans that are laid out by the manipulators have many different parts to them to achieving their goals, and they don't really go and do all of one thing everywhere. They tend to do lots of different things all over the place. Like America's economy is being sucked dry of all of its wealth, but meanwhile the Australian economy is being used to transfer wealth, and it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, your country has a part in the global financial manipulation system. So by looking at what's occurring in your country, you can tell what part your country's playing in this big grand plan. Now, I've followed the price of gold and silver in Australian dollars for a very long time. Our currency tracks along with the price of gold and silver quite well, because people believe that our currency is a commodity-based currency. Well, in a lot of ways it is. However, in recent times, it's shown that there are other things that give strength to the Australian dollar. Over the first few months of 2016, the Australian dollar has gradually accumulated quite a bit of strength. Now, a lot of people base this on the fact that our Reserve Bank interest rates are around 2%, and that's giving confidence in the Australian economy. But the other day we saw China announce that they were going to ramp up a whole heap more debt to stimulate their economy, and this gave the Australian commodity sector a bit of a boost, and the Australian dollar went up with it. But as that news waned and commodities started to fade again, the Australian dollar held value, for no real apparent reason, because little else has changed. And even with this small amount of upwards pressure we're seeing in the precious metals, the Australian dollar moved up with it and stayed high. Precious metals moved down, the Australian dollar stayed high. We see news from China about more spending, commodities goes up, the Australian dollar goes up, but commodities wane off and the Australian dollar stays high. This is a very strange anomaly. The Australian dollar's pushed past 75 cents, with no real reason to seem to support it. But if you actually have a look at the Australian economy, you may actually see the answer for it. 65% of Australia's GDP is services based, and of that 65+%, 11% are financial services. Now this might not sound a lot, but if you put it in perspective, which is the mining sector and the agricultural sector of Australia's economy equals about 12% of Australia's GDP, which really means the mining sector is around about 7 or 8%. And look how much effect that's having. Trillions and trillions of dollars are moving through that sector, yet it's still only around about 7 to 8%. So back to the financial sector, which is 11%, for 23 million people, is absolutely ridiculous. there's no way possible that Australia is supporting 11% of its GDP in financial services by Australians. There's just not enough of us. So that right there tells you that a vast proportion of the Australian financial sector is operating in foreign countries. And most of those countries are in Asia. Australia has built a huge amount of economic ties with Asia. The financial sector is Australia's largest single contributor to the GDP. Kind of exposes Australia's purpose of the transfer of wealth into the new financial system. Not only is Australia's economy not attached to the mining sector as heavily as people would like us to believe, but we're also generating huge amounts of wealth to the GDP through a sector that is continuing to grow. Seems to be providing enough confidence in Australia to continue investing here and making the Australian dollar a very good currency to transfer into. But how long all this will hold together, who knows? Because by all rights the Australian dollar should be going down, but with anomalies that are occurring, like the 82-to-1 ratio in gold and silver, the Australian dollar higher than it should be, it gives a clear example of unseen things occurring. These kinds of movements that have been occurring in the silver market have shown that the monetary systems are in crisis. You see, I believe we're witnessing an event as significant as the fall of Rome, with the transitions that are occurring in our world at the moment, that when all the dust has settled, it's going to have left massive changes to the reality of the world that we live in. And the time that we're living in now will consider to be the time before. And many people will ask in the future why we didn't do things, or why we didn't say things, or why we didn't stop things from happening. Because I expect the system that is brought in, and even though the level of oppression that we feel today is fairly high, it'll seem much less after this transition has occurred. It really is important for you to do all you can to make yourself aware of what's occurring in the world. It's not just about buying gold and silver, it's about changing how you behave. There's no point in telling the world it's on fire if you yourself don't pick up a bucket of water and try to put it out. Because while there's so many people running around screaming fire, fire, but not doing anything to put it out, that's not going to change anything at all. And by picking up a little gold and silver, you are picking up a bucket of water and throwing it on, because you're removing your wealth from that system, which means that you're not going to lose your wealth. But many different things will occur over this period of time. Some countries will really have a horrible time of it, and there'll be complete anarchy, and there'll be other countries where it seems like nothing's happening at all. But should we see war break out, because it wouldn't be the first time the answer to this kind of problem has been world war, it kind of makes you understand why a country like China will continue with a massively sped up system of debt creation. Because even though the Chinese are making new washing machines and TVs, they're also out there building man-made islands, remember? So every time they make a huge leap forward in their economic progress, they make sure that their key programs are expanded. And a lot of that is military. So what do they care about huge amounts of debt when they're preparing for war? Because that possibility creeps closer every day, especially with the South China Sea issue. It's also interesting to note that Halliburton shares have had a bit of a spike upwards in recent times, and in the past that's been a very good indicator that America is about to blow somebody up, because Halliburton are connected directly to the American military. So with a real and present danger of war over the horizon, combined with a financial crisis, that it may be used as the reason to shut down all the markets and allowing them to implement the new system. Because a market freeze will come with that transition, and there's not much better excuse than a global war to suspend all trading. So when it comes to physical bullion purchases, now is the time to get it. There's too many factors that support making it difficult for you to get physical bullion in the near future. Difficulty of access to things, even though they're cheap, will be a telltale sign that the markets are about to let go. And when that happens, those markets will be frozen. So you can still get plenty of silver and gold right now, and access and availability is still very easy. No new rules or laws are being implemented, and no new mechanisms of control are currently being brought in. So this is keeping availability very high. So to be getting it at such low prices, and still having the ability to obtain it, is a good sign that there's still more time before this market plays out. Now I've said before that I felt the manipulating forces want it below $14, and I still think there's a good chance that this might happen. Even though we're at 82 to 1 on our ratio between gold and silver, it's not unheard of for it to go to 100. So there is a good chance that silver can still move down without too much happening with gold. But I don't think it will be long-lived, and we may get this opportunity one or two more times to get it at super low prices. But with our debt bubble here in Australia, we really do have a downside. There's a very good possibility that foreign investment might get a little scared off when that bursts, and all of this false strength in the Australian dollar is going to evaporate very quickly, and we could see a very nasty downside to that. We could be looking at the Australian dollar going down to below 60 cents US, and if precious metals holds at the prices they are now, that'll make it very, very expensive to buy bullion here in Australia. That'll put it in the range of $25, $26 an ounce. So however you look at it, from whatever angle, now is the time to stack up. Get as much silver and gold as you possibly can at this point in time, so that you can take full advantage of availability of the supply. Righto, that's about it for this one. So like I'm always saying to you, look after yourself, take it easy, and I'll talk to you later.